Do you have anything else, Caleb? Okay, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Caleb.
Yeah, I appreciate your attention to this.
Public comment. Mr. Dixon. And then Mr. Rathman.
Let me start off, Paul Dixon, Clark County. Let me start off on the rare occasion that Commissioner Raines' line of questioning is exactly where I started in my county advisory board, asking the 4N down people there, Pat Cummins and Russell, were the main people who responded, which is why would we be putting sheep into an area to where we had identified all of the things. Since I don't know if Russell is still here, but one of the things that Russell said that I hadn't heard Caleb or Mike Cox say is that the sheep that they were looking to put back in are, if they come from Nevada, are all carriers of the diseases already that took out the sheep in the Humboldts. I mean, Humboldts in the North Rubies. And that when, according to Russell, when they looked at least, I would say, I don't know how scientific it is, but when you look back for the die-off we had in the 90s versus this one, both of those die-offs were associated with extremely cold spells at the time, that there is some supposition that there may be something tied to being a carrier and being tied to succumbing to basically having a long cold snap in the system. And again, we don't know. And so Jay Holt, who's on my advisory board, is a veterinarian in Las Vegas. Commissioners Howland and Schramm and Macbeth have all met him. Jay actually took on quite a line of questioning based on his medical background and being a veterinarian. And in the end, we felt that if you were going to sacrifice, if it turned out to be that 50 bighorn sheep, what you could actually learn, as Mike Cox said, because you have a controlled experiment from start to finish, and you're not picking it up when you've got major die-off going on in the system, that might be the most important thing we could do, because to date, nowhere in the western United States or Canada have we ever done a study that would have the potential to allow us, if a disease outbreak started, to have captured it from start to finish, and it would be probably invaluable scientific information. Because by and large, I agree with you, Commissioner Rain, these are very valuable resources, and it would be hard to look at that and say, do we want to sacrifice 50 valuable resources, but by the same token, if there was an event and you could learn how to prevent an event because you had studied it from start to finish, then maybe factors of 10-fold value added would be there, because everybody in the western United States would benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rathman? And just to lay out the ground rules, most people on these comments haven't gone 3 minutes, but if I understand that you've got a written document that you already submitted to us, looks pretty long, so you got 3 minutes. Okay, we're going to let you know 15 seconds before, we're being absolutely consistent here. We had a number of bear people here yesterday, and we held their feet to the fire on this, and so we're going to be consistent throughout this commission meeting on that. Okay.
Having people here that are bear sounds like it's a really interesting meeting. And thank you. 3 minutes is fine. Most of my comments are included in the handout that I brought down, and each should have a copy. The discussion I just heard was really encouraging. There's a paper that was sponsored by the North American Wild Sheep Foundation some years ago that summarized this whole discussion. It's easy to transplant the animals, but when you do so, you're transplanting all the pathogens and all the parasites. And without careful veterinary supervision, a lot of transplants, transplanted animals die with the parasites and pathogens are still in new locations. So thank you. Mr. Fullstones, whose name's on this paper, and the cover letter is my note. The second part is actually a letter that he wrote and delivered to had me delivered to the Elko County Commissioners when they're holding hearings on the same subject. Part of this information in Elko County's accumulating will be used to reinforce their statements as they address NEPA procedures with the Forest Service and BLM. So that the information that they've accumulated in 3 hearings includes statements like this. So we'll see more of those in the future. Mr. Fullstone asked specifically about the subject you just discussed, which is hold harmless agreement. He's entered into those with agencies, Forest Service and BLM in the past, and so he'll be glad to know that the NDOW is still pursuing those. We support that. We still have an objection to the transplanting plan, especially the Bighorn Sheep policy statement that so strongly supports this idea of separation of bighorns and domestic sheep. And one of the experiences that this particular ranch has had was actually in California dealing with Sierra bighorn sheep. They had a group of bighorn sheep that chased them to their domestic sheep pens every year for 15 years with no indication of disease, no indication of problem. The only indication of an effect was the control of predators around the domestic sheep seemed to directly benefit to the bighorn sheep. They survived really well in the proximity of domestic sheep. So the real life experiences don't support this political drive to insist on separation of the domestic sheep and bighorn sheep. There's a series of statements that Mr. Fullstone made in his
15 seconds.
Oh, okay, thank you. I hope that you'll read these attachments. If you have any questions, my address and phone number is on the first page, and Mr. Fullstone's address and phone number is on the header on the second document.
Thank you, Mr. Rothman. Brett Jefferson.
Good morning, Brett Jefferson, representing Nevada Bighorns Unlimited. NDOW in 2009 released 25 bighorn in the Stillwaters. In 2010, they released 40 bighorn in 5 different ranges. We believe that this plan is based on sound science and conservative biological approach. This proposed translocation experiment is essential to our increased understanding of this disease and how these animals react to this disease over a long term. Nevada Bighorns Unlimited is in full support of this plan to translocate 740 animals, which is proposed by the department. So much so that NBU has budgeted $250,000 of sportsman's money in support of the plan. $100,000 of this commitment is to habitat and water development projects, and another $150,000 towards the capture and release of bighorn sheep and pronghorn antelope. NBU sees this plan as an essential first step towards creating an increased hunt opportunities for sportsmen, and our hope is for an even more aggressive plan in the following years. We urge the Commission's support and approval of this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brett. Any other public comment on the Rex?
Rex Flowers, Washoe County Cap. Last year and this year we went with the department's release. We felt it was good. But last year the Virginia range release came up and was shot down at that time. At that time we viewed it not only as another hunting opportunity, but that location being close to Reno may allow people of the city of Reno, a metropolitan area, a better chance to view wildlife, such desert sheep being our state animal, and may allow for some educational purposes to go on there. And I think we should keep that in consideration too. I mean, it's going to allow us to get the non-hunting public a better opportunity also. Okay?
Thanks, Rex. George Corner.
For the record, George Corner, representing Nevada Outfitters and Guides Association. I'll have to be very careful here. We get very little feedback on any of this agenda, so I can't say conclusively that the majority of the Nevada Outfitters and Guides Association supports any of this, but the bighorn sheep transplant, I especially want to be careful of. I planned on coming here saying that outfitters in the Rubies supported the bighorn sheep plan that has been outlined, but some occurrences have put me in a position where I'm not absolutely sure of that anymore, but I can say conclusively that the majority of the outfitters in the Rubies and the East Humboldt support this plan. And I would point out that the one area I think you might want to call Caleb back for some more clarification on. One thing that was brought up in the Elko CAB meeting was 5 rams out of the East Humboldt. They were concerned, the Department of Wildlife was concerned the rams are going to want to migrate back to the East Humboldts. So those rams will be removed, given to a research facility. None of the rams out of the East Humboldts will be transplanted to the Rubies. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, George. And Gil?
Ilyana Carson Cab, we had the benefit of Carl Lackey giving us a presentation on what was going to happen in the Virginia range. And I think just like Rex said, in addition to all the wildlife benefits, I think it would be great to see the public be able to view the animals from the road, and the partner, the private partner in this is also indicated to have accessibility, to the area, so that if any other scientific groups or other people who want to take part in this whole process can also gain access. So it's going to be a good thing all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Come on up.
Tom Casanelli with Humboldt County Game Board. A few things. Humboldt County has been a recipient of a lot of transplants, and we feel blessed to have the sheep herds we have, and we support the department's recommendations. We had some concerns. We knew the Virginia range would be another issue at this meeting, and it's been reiterated already how we don't have to do things for the act of hunting every time. The species itself is more important, and the more areas we get these species into, the better off this state is. And if we can hunt them, it's just a plus to it. We can utilize those herds. The ruby herd, we did have a lot of discussion on that. We would love to see Alberta sheep brought back into the East Humboldts if this does go through, just because that was the genetics we had there in the past, and they were pretty proven, as we all know. And that, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Amy, Don, do you have a card, Don?
No, I didn't.
Just, could you fill one out? And, I mean, you can do it afterwards, but just fill one out and put it in, so we have it for the record.
For the record, I'm Don Alt. The Virginia range, I have quite a few miles of rangeland adjoining the area where that transplant will take place. And I have never received any documents or anything. And if I'm restricted from grazing any class or type of livestock, I'll consider taking. Thank you.
Walt?
Yeah, Walt Mandeville, Lyon County. I've already indicated that our board approves this, but I wanted to make a couple comments on the opportunity for education, for class groups and what have you to go out. And I'd like to see an opportunity somewhere along the line to develop a couple viewing points that people can get off the highway. If you're driving down the highway gawking at sheep, that might not be a good thing. So anyhow, that's what I have to offer. Thanks.
I guess that would probably have to be in conjunction with Nevada Department of Transportation. Mel?
Mel Dillon, Washoe County, Nevada Bighorns Unlimited Director. Pretty exciting, I'd have to say, Mr. Rob through the chair. 450 animals, pretty cool. I'd like to see more of the reintroduction, you know, in there it says it's augmentation, but a couple points I'd like to make about the Virginia range. I've been on the ground a few times. We are going to build with the approval here today. I hope it is an approval. We are going to build a couple guzzlers right away within probably 30 to 45 days. I like to see the numbers that are there now at 50. Viewing area was just talked about. It's something that we've looked at. As a matter of fact, one of the guzzlers you can see from a cut right off of Interstate 80, and we're trying to situate that so we can see it off the Patrick exit, so people can maybe view some of this stuff in the guzzler. More importantly, I'd like to talk about a couple comments about cool-off. Who knows, how long do we have to wait? 2006, we had a 75% die-off to 85% die-off in area 181. I hunted the area two years later. This stock, interestingly enough, was introduced from a mountain range that had poor lamb recruitment, and the biologist might not even have wanted these sheep to go into 181. He took them. This went from 19 sheep in 1992 or 3 to 257 in 2005, counting. On the cool-off, I guess now I'm in this area constantly, and we're almost back to where we were just 4 years ago, before the die-off. I don't know if there has to be a cool-off. I think that's somebody's guess, I guess. Do we have to cull things? I don't think so. The ram I shot showed signs of, he was in a die-off. He was 4 years old in die-off. And his lungs were scarred. So he survived, and he was breeding the day I harvested him. So, I kind of, I let him spread his genes. I kind of see it, that cool-off, maybe we don't need it. I'd like to also say in the sawtooth, we've seen the same thing. We've seen 100% lamb recruitment the very next year. That's something that's just about unheard of. And then in the Del Mars, same concern, same question. We've been doing it a long time, but we have reassurance from our counterpart in the south that they would like to see sheep go into areas of new places. So I think we're working in the right direction there. And I am, you know, really excited to see it. Thanks.
Okay, no further public comment. I'm going to bring it back, and Commissioner Drew would like to make that disclosure.
Yeah, just for the record, Commissioner Drew, I wanted to make a disclosure in terms of my for-profit position. We have several clients in Lincoln County and one in Story County who could potentially be impacted one way or the other by some of these operations and projects that are being proposed. So on advice of counsel, in this, for the sake of being safe, I'm going to abstain from any action on any of the transplants in Story or Lincoln County. That being said, I might have some comments regarding the others, but let's see how the discussion goes first.
Commissioner Drew, could you just disclose your employer, the name of your employer?
Yep, my employer is Resource Concepts out of Carson City.
Thank you. Commissioner Bob?
On the Story County or the Virginia Range transplant, I've been contacted by the superintendent of schools in Story County, who is in great support of this transplant. that he could use in conjunction with the school kids, take pretty much every school kid that goes to Story County out there to view these sheep. Talked to Story County commissioners about this. They worked with Roger Norman, Lance Gilman, the property owners, who are very cooperative. The Story County Commission's on board, the school district, everybody up there has specifically contacted me to say that they need our support to go forward. So I just want to say that pretty much everybody in Story County is on board, and they're not just saying that they'll accept it, they want it, and they're the ones really pushing this. They were kind of put back, it didn't go last time.
Any other commissioner comments or discussion? Commissioner Rain?
Inevitable, right? Hey, those are the questions before. I just got a few comments, and well, first we'll start off with the good, and mark your calendar, Mr. Cox. Now, I really like one of your projects that you know that when I was first looking at them, I was somewhat worried about them, but the idea of transplanting those remaining sheep from the East Humboldts into the Rubies, that is a very good idea. You know, I had not heard of that until I saw the support material come out, and looking at it, you know, that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. Okay, now we get the calendar marked. Don't listen to the rest. No, but seriously, that is a really good idea there. But, you know, then the corollary to that is the East Humboldt. You know, I am really worried about going too soon on that. Yeah, do I think it's a great idea at some point to transplant them in there? Absolutely, probably. But there's a few things right now. One is clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We definitely need to be clear of those sheep that are in there in order to go with this plan that is being undertaken by transplanting them into the Rubies. And they're relatively close. We clearly, and I'm sure Endow would do it regardless, need a full season of post-gather to look for the remaining sheep and what's left over. And we'd also need an additional season, or maybe two, depending on what they come up with, to make sure, and as they're talking about with their monitoring, to check to see whether or not they're wandering back in from the other range. I mean, there's been speculation in the past that there's probably not a lot of transfer, but as everybody said, including today, it's a maybe deal, and that's why they're collaring the rams especially. And ewes, too, as well known, they travel. I mean, as recently as 2 years ago, I saw a ewe down near Eureka, where I'm told there are none within 2 mountain ranges. The guy told me about it, go out, yep, that would be a bighorn ewe. We were trying to speculate whether it was desert or Rocky Mountain. It's about 50-50 between the 2 ranges. Everybody that saw it had different ideas, but you know, there they are. But you know, so it's one of those things. If we're going to have a start-to-finish study in the East Humboldt, it would just seem that it would be very prudent to put it off. You know, well, first you got to put it off a year, 'cause it's going to take a year to do the transplant. Put it off a year to make sure there are none there, and then give it a little while to make sure those sheep don't go back in. And then you'll be able to have your study, and it's probably a good idea to have that study like you're talking about, but pushing the time frame, pushing it to get it within this time frame here, there's no imperative reason to just push it up a year. And if you want to have a clear study, we should probably, you know, let it slack a year, 2014 or 15, be a great time frame, but then you'll be sure you're out of those sheep. You'll know whether or not they're going back and forth. You'll have that data. I mean, you know, why push it? It's so expensive. It's such an important thing. I mean, I want the sheep there as much as anybody else. I've spent more time than many people, and of course not lots, but of looking at those sheep. It's a great place to have them. But if we're going to do this, and we're going to spend the loot, don't push the time frame any more than we absolutely have to. That's the deal. And okay, the other one. Let's move on to other areas. The ghost chute. I'm still, you know, it's adjacent there to the Indian reservation there. You know, there's a lot of things. They're going to be wandering around. They'll probably be down on a lot of that land, I would suspect, but I know about that as much as about anywhere, because one thing we've learned about bighorn sheep is they go where they want to go and not where people tell them to go. But, you know, that's would be a concern. They're gonna be down there. I know they've got various species down there, but it is a significant distance. Also, now let's go on to the Virginia range. You know, I mean, I can do the mass wells next. This will undoubtedly get approved, but there's a few things we need to think about on this deal. One is, they're not gonna stay up on top of the mountain, or at least a lot of them aren't. There's rivers on a couple sides. They're gonna be down at those rivers. They're gonna be down where you can see them from 395 undoubtedly. They're gonna be moving right down to the residential areas, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it was really cool going down to Henderson and the park that's been mentioning, and you go out and see the domestic wild bighorn sheep that are hanging out at everybody's houses. I mean, they're about as they're more domesticated than any domestic sheep I ever saw. But you know, but nonetheless, we need to just look at that from. This is probably, I would think, in the long range, this is not. We're using hunters' money to transplant sheep in for non-hunting purposes, because more than likely.
No, that's not true.
Please, they throw this out there, because any and all cooperative agreements can and will change as time goes by. TRI, they're going to go changes. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So quite likely a lot of our access, and a lot of it is checkerboarded in those areas. Private land, the public land, it's checkerboarded. That's a real concern. And you know, so the question for the commission is well, even if that is gone, at some point in the future, is it still a good idea just because we like to have them down where you can see it from the freeway? I think the commission probably can decide that that's a reasonable idea. But they're probably not, but seeing where they've gone in other areas and looking at the previous plans, they're not gonna stay up on top of the mountain more than likely. Or at least a portion of them aren't. They're gonna be down to those rivers and the agriculture areas on both sides, visiting all those wild horses down there. Like you see it from the freeway, or the 395 almost freeway these days. And, you know, well today, the Delamars, one question that needs to come up with the Delamars, and well, you know, another transplant, but what I would like to see from Endow, and maybe Mr. Cox can answer it at some point, is when is enough enough? Is this going to be the last transplant? You know, should it just be a continual, every 2 or 4 years we'll throw more in there? I would like to see a, you know, not necessarily even a formula, but just kind of something on paper saying, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking is happening, but we ought to, if it doesn't work, or the next one doesn't work, or the 5th one from now doesn't work, maybe that will be enough. We should have a plan. It appears we don't necessarily have an exit strategy if it doesn't work. We should formulate an exit strategy if it doesn't work. You know, I mean, we're talking the war deal. You know, if it ain't gonna work, you need an exit strategy. And that's what I'd like to see as far as the Delamar. If it don't work, let us know. And seeing that, you'll be happy to know that. Next.
Commissioner Howell.
The only 2 comments I'd like to make is the first one is concerning Mr. Alt. He wasn't contacted about this, and he's got property adjacent to it, sounds like. So he should be contacted. And maybe there's somebody else we might have missed too in the contact book. And I'd also like to remind that we did pass a policy concerning transplant that included predator control prior to the transplant. And I don't think we should forget that, especially on a reintroduction. I think it's really important on a reintroduction. Where we're augmenting, we already have a pretty good assessment of the predator problem, if it's there. But a reintroduction, I think we should adhere to the policy for sure.
Commissioner Drew.
Just a series of comments, and most of these will probably pertain to the projects in Elko County. But you know, I was really pleased, and I think it's a real big positive, that the permittee and Endow are working so closely, and you know, to the point where they're developing a hold harmless agreement. And I like that for 2 reasons. One, it shows collaboration between the landowners or the permittees and the department, which I think needs to happen. but it also, in a broader sense, shows collaboration and communication early on in the process. And I think that'll alleviate a lot of these discussions in the future if we start expanding upon that model. In terms of support material, bring it on. I mean, I would like to see it personally in the future. The more you can give me, the better. I feel like I'm back in college, and I guess maybe it makes me feel young again. You know, I know there's risks associated with some of these, especially with some of the projects we've looked at, again, with the Rockies and Elko County. And as a sportsman, I go back to the Cavs, and I look at the Cavs, and at this point, my count is 9 in support, 0 opposed. Sportsmen understand the risks associated with these projects better than anyone in terms of the wildlife, and they're willing to put their hard-earned dollars towards those projects. And so I think that speaks volumes. In terms of some of the desert sheep projects, the other thing that I don't think got brought out is my understanding, and maybe NDOT wants to respond to this, is that we have excess animals in some places that need an outlet. And I don't think that should be left out of the conversation either. And then I guess my last point, and again, depending on how the motion goes, I may or may not be able to participate, but I think there needs to be a caveat with almost all of these projects that, you know, the projects will move ahead with appropriate federal approvals or approvals from the federal land management agencies, simply because they're all, you know, most of them are taking place on public land. So I don't think it's going to hurt to caveat any motion going forward that way and just show that, you know, we're supportive of collaborating with our federal partners. So those are my general comments at this point.
Commissioner Drew, could you identify the particular projects where you feel you have the conflict? Because I like the motion to basically be split into two pieces. Those projects that you do not have a conflict, and then those projects that you do, so we can get your vote. One of the things that I think this commission should be aware of is that when we do have these conflicts, the legislature always wants us to try to maximize involvement of the commissioners in these votes. And so if there's any way, and this applies to any commissioner who has a potential conflict, we will try to fashion the motions such as to get your maximum involvement, and but then to carve out those areas, those particular projects, or whatever the issue is. In this case, it's these projects as to which you do have a problem, and you meet your obligations under the ethics requirements.
Absolutely, and I guess I'll go one step further and make this easy. Basically, my conflict lies with any project within Story or Lincoln County. So let me get to my cover page and make a motion here. My motion would be to approve the Nevada Department of Wildlife Big Game Release Plan for fiscal year 2012-2013, with the exception of any project in Story or Lincoln County.
Second.
Okay, now I have a question. Is that clear enough to the department as to, if we do a motion that is not going to identify a specific project, but is just going to identify the counties, do we know which ones we're talking about, or do we need, maybe I'll ask the DAG, do we need further disclosure as to specific projects, or is the identification of the county sufficient? Okay, it's okay according to the DAG, so.
And also, to be clear, that's across antelope as well. It's not just limited to the big fur sheep. So.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Any comment on the motion? Commissioners? Okay, see no comment. We'll go ahead and vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Aye. All opposed? One. Commissioner Ray. Okay, so what that means is we have to have another commissioner who probably needs to do the flip side of that motion.
Before I make my motion, is there any way I could get the gentleman that said he has adjacent property in Story County to come back to the podium so I can ask one more question before my motion?
Still need a card on that?
You said you had adjacent property. Is it property or is it a grazing allotment? Is it private property, grazing allotment, Story County, Lyon County?
Lyon, and Story County, a small portion of it is Story County. It is no longer a grazing allotment. I have filed the proper paperwork, I've taken ownership of it. I filed it with accessory interest law.
Could you please state your name for the record, just so we have your name for the record?
Don Alt for the record.
Thank you.
I make a motion that we approve the game release plan for Story and Lincoln counties as submitted by the department.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is the Story and Lincoln County portions of the projects.
Across all species.
Across all species. Okay, we got that covered under the original motion in a second. Any additional comment by the commissioners? Seeing none, why don't we go ahead and vote? All in favor, aye, state aye. Aye. All opposed?
Abstain.
Commissioner Rain, did you oppose?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Kinda like most of that mention, thanks.
Okay, I guess we have to make a decision here. Do we want to break for lunch? I think we probably need to take a break. We've been here a good chunk of time. So, can we shorten up the lunch? What kind of, would 45 minutes be enough? Okay, we'll reconvene at 1:30. We're breaking for lunch.
What time did he say?